because old Seymour, our mate Seymour, there, David Seymour, who's counting down the days until he gets to put his name on over the Winston thing.
Oh, Jesus.
He's got this ministry, right? The Ministry of Regulations, because he just wants to get rid of as many regulations as he can. Well, a regulatory impact assessment of David Seymour's treaty principle bills has failed a quality assurance test carried out by his own Ministry for Regulation. The Ministry for Regulation says not enough work has been done to assess the possible impacts of the treaty principles bill for it to be passed into law. ACT Party leader, I can see you smiling without even looking at the screen, Chewie. I'm looking at the other screen. ACT Party leader David Seymour is the minister responsible for both the Regulation Ministry and the Treaty Principles Bill, which is part of his Associate Justice portfolio. A regulatory impact statement prepared by the Ministry of Justice failed a quality assurance test undertaken by a panel with members from both the Justice and Regulation Ministries. It said that ministerial direction from Seymour and time constraints had limited the range of policy options that could be considered, and the depth of analysis done. In-depth analysis involved testing the assumptions underpinning the problem, definition, investigating unintended consequences, and undertaking consultation. There's a bunch of stuff in there. I think what I might actually do is actually just go straight to the RIS. Here it is here. So this is the regulatory impact statement, right? Let me read you some things straight from the statement. So it's just gone through and it talked about, this is in confidence, people. It says it on the paper, so don't tell anybody about this.
Just amongst us.
Just between me and you. So this is the executive summary, and it kind of lays out what's going on. It says this is the coalition agreement, said they'd do this, and the objectives were to generate, greater certainty about how it works, yada, 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 yada. And then it comes to this. Although the proposal to introduce the bill could have some value, we consider the status quo is more beneficial. Under this option, the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal would continue to articulate the meaning of the treaty principles in line with the existing legislation and practice. This option would uphold treaty obligations to the same extent as they are now. More from the RIS. So it's talking again about what's happening, what's going on, the final content, etc. goes this. However, their description, those who are doing the Treaty Principles Bill, in the policy proposed is inconsistent with the treaty, te tiriti. It does not accurately reflect Article 2, which affirms the continuing exercise of tino rangatiratanga, restricting the rights of hapu and iwi to those specified in legislation or agreement with the Crown, implies that tino rangatiratanga is derived from kawanatanga. It reduces Indigenous rights to a set of ordinary rights that could be exercised by any group of citizens. I'm just going to do this and I'll keep reading. An interpretation of Article 2 that does not recognise the collective rights held by iwi and hapu or by the distinct status of Māori as the Indigenous people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, calls into question the very purpose of the treaty. You know how they said this is not a referendum on the treaty? This is not a referendum on the treaty. Well, this, according to the RIS, calls into question the very purpose of the treaty and its status in our constitutional arrangements. The status quo also provides a higher degree of certainty about what the treaty principles are. So right now, what we've got right now provides more certainty as to what the treaty principles are and how they operate in New Zealand law. That's it. So that's come from, in part, David Seymour's own regulations ministry, who have gone, sister, this is not happening in the way that you want. But guess what, Chewie? They will, what's that word we're looking for? Ignore it.
I live for a day that David Seymour gets thoroughly regulated by its own Ministry for Regulation. Just regulated so hard. And they're right. We said this right from the get-go, that we had to be really careful about the language about this bill, that it wasn't that he was going to say it's not about changing the treaty, it's changing the principles. The principles change how the treaty is interpreted.
He would say it's defining the principles, not even changing the principles.
And that was always going to be his sneaky little jump through the window, don't come through the front door about fucking with the treaty.
Should we say it again?
So
this is from the regulatory impact statement. The status quo, how things are right now, provides a higher degree of certainty about what the treaty principles are and how they operate in New Zealand law. That's right now. So what they're trying to do will be a lesser degree. It won't be as technical. It won't be as clear what they're proposing, Chewie.
This shower of idiots are just real bad at this. And let's be clear, this shitty bill, this fucking dead duck, is going to get paraded up and down in front of our faces for the next 6 months, even though everybody says it's going nowhere. We're just going to spend that money. We're just going to drag this rotten corpse of David Seymour's Atlas bad idea up and down our mediascape for 6 months. That's going to be great. Everybody's going to get on well. Everybody's going to make educated and considered comments. Everyone's going to make sure that they're respectful of each other. It's going to be awesome. Thanks, David.
And remember, we'll say this again, even though we've just read it too. He says it's not about the treaty. Well, an interpretation of Article 2 that does not recognize the collective rights held by iwi. So an interpretation of Article 2 that doesn't look at Article 2 like it is today, right? So a new way of looking at Article 2. Yep, got all that. And then calls into question the very purpose of the treaty. So if you reinterpret Article 2 to not talk about the collective rights held by iwi and hapu, or the distinct status of Māori as the Indigenous people of New Zealand, what you're doing is you're calling into question the very purpose of the treaty and its status in our constitutional arrangements. But of course, Chewie, it's not about the treaty. Hey, that's what we keep getting told. It's not about the treaty.
No.
No, it's not about the treaty.